All right, so we got yet another layer being added to this ongoing cover-up by the Uvalde Police Department in the wake of their completely failed response to the mass shooting at Robb Elementary School down in Uvalde, Texas. So after weeks and weeks and weeks of lying and repeatedly refusing to cooperate with investigators, we now have this from Vice. They say Uvalde hires private law firm to argue that it doesn't have to release school shooting public records. And they say some of the records relating to Robb Elementary School shooting could be highly embarrassing and involve emotional/mental distress and are not of legitimate concern to the public. Not of legitimate concern to the public, okay? As we actively have parents of some of the kids who were massacred as a result of the police basically standing by and allowing it to happen, all of these parents who are coming out and begging for the information on specifically what was happening at the time of this shooting, and they're saying that this was not of legitimate concern to the public. Just completely fucking ridiculous at face value, but we get into some of the details here. They say the city of Uvalde and its police department are working with a private law firm to prevent the release of nearly any record relating to the mass shooting at Robb Elementary School in which 19 children and 2 teachers died, according to a letter obtained by Motherboard in response to a series of public information requests we made. And they say the public records Uvalde is trying to suppress include body camera footage, photos, 911 calls, emails, text messages, criminal records, and more. And they got a quote here saying the city has not voluntarily released any information to a member of the public. The city's lawyer, Cynthia Trevino, who works for the private law firm, wrote in a letter to Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. And the city wrote the letter asking Paxton for a determination about what information it is required to release to the public, which is standard practice in Texas. And Paxton's office will eventually rule which of the city's arguments have merits and which will determine if any records is made, any public records is required to be released. So if you were hoping that this Attorney General Ken Paxton was going to err on the side of being transparent with the public, well, I would probably think again. Here from the Washington Post, they say Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton's shameful Uvalde cop-out, quote, and this is from Ken Paxton himself, "God always has a plan." So this was his response to the situation that we're talking about right now in the debate surrounding what type of information should be released. He literally said, God always has a plan, okay? This was the same guy who was in the wake of this mass shooting literally within days, going on networks like Fox News and basically saying we need to harden schools, we need to create them into being these, little mini police states, basically. We need to do door control instead of gun control, etc. So, I wouldn't be holding out any hope that he is going to be erring on the side of releasing more of this information. It seems like, if anything, he, along with other top Texas officials like Greg Abbott, the governor of Texas, are really just being complicit in this attempted cover-up here. But they continue with more details, saying the letter makes clear, however, that the city and its police department want to be exempted from releasing a wide variety of records, in part because it is being sued, in part because some of the records could include highly embarrassing information, and in part because some of the information is not of legitimate concern to the public, in part because the information could reveal methods, techniques, and strategies for preventing and predicting crime. Yeah, because your methods clearly worked out so well in this mass shooting, but they say in part because some of the information may cause or may regard emotional and mental distress, whatever the fuck that means, and in part because the response to the shooting is being investigated by the Rangers, the FBI, and the Uvalde County District Attorney. But they continue down here saying the city says that it has received over 148 separate public records requests, including from Motherboard, and has lumped them all together, making a broad legal argument as to why it should not be required to respond to many of them. And earlier this week, Motherboard reported on a similar letter sent to Paxton by the Texas Department of Public Safety, which wanted to suppress body camera footage because it could expose weaknesses in police response to crimes that criminals could exploit. Okay, so they're trying to say we can't release the body camera footage because then what if a mass shooter in the future goes and looks at this footage and they figure out our tactical response and our strategies for responding to this? I mean, they are literally saying this as we know for a fact that they were standing outside of the classrooms, refusing to go in a complete display of cowardice, refusing to go in and confront the shooter, which is contradictory to their own policy in these types of situations, refusing to go in and confront the shooter while kids were bleeding out and dying inside of these classrooms. And they're saying that we can't release the footage of all of this because it would reveal their weaknesses. I mean, the weakness was you guys. It was you guys not following with what your training was stating. It was you guys refusing to go in and confront the shooter because, let's be honest about it, you cared more about your own personal lives, your own personal safety in this circumstance circumstance than the safety and the lives of innocent children in this shooting. So, I mean, that was the weakness. There was no like tactical response here that succeeded in doing what they were doing. No, it was a complete failure. And so releasing this type of information is 100% pertinent to the public interest. People are coming out and begging them to release this footage because we deserve to understand exactly what was going on at the time for the, over an hour that they were just sitting outside of these classrooms. And we also had some more information that was just released in the last couple of days here from ABC News. They say police didn't try to open the doors to the Uvalde classrooms with the shooter inside. They did not try to open the doors. Okay, so this is just one, lie added on top of the dozens and dozens of other lies that we've seen in the wake of this. But they were basically claiming that, we had to wait for, the janitor to get his keys, and then we were testing out all of these different keys on the different doors and desperately trying to figure out a way to get into this classroom. Number one, that's completely ridiculous because we know that they have, the military hardware, the gear to be able to break into people's houses on a regular basis. So there's no reason why they wouldn't have been able to just bust through this door if they really wanted to. But number two, we now know that that was just a complete lie. I mean, they didn't even try to get into this classroom because the door was unlocked. They could have just opened the door and gone in immediately, which is what the policy, according to their own police department, is supposed to be in active shooter situations. So again, just another lie added on top of the plentiful, amount of other lies that we have seen throughout the wake of this. But a little bit more details here. They got another quote here saying, they claim that the compilation of individuals' criminal history is highly embarrassing information, which is a strange cover. The embarrassing information is the inept police response, said Christopher Schneider, a professor of sociology at Brandon University, let's go Brandon, who studies police body cameras and the disclosure of footage from them, told Motherboard, noting that suspects' criminal histories are released by the police all the time without anyone having requested them. And they say again, quote, they have no problem using information like that against individuals of the public. The information disclosure needs to go both ways if that's the case. And he says disciplinary or criminal records for members of the police, for example, would be obviously relevant public information in a case in which the police response has been highly criticized. And they say it's rather ripe to say any of this is not of legitimate concern to the public. The whole country is trying to figure out how to not have this happen again. And he's 100% correct there. I mean, this is just brazen excuses. They're hiring a private law firm to argue that this isn't of pertinent concern to the public, that, this is highly embarrassing information and video camera footage. Yeah, no shit it is. I mean, that's part of the reason why we need to get to the bottom of exactly, who is at fault in this circumstance. Obviously, it's the police, but, the commanding officer on the scene at the time, right? I've covered him on this channel multiple different times. Pete Uvalde, or whatever the fuck his name is. Getting to the bottom of exactly who is making these calls to not go into the classroom. Of course, that's going to be embarrassing information because you guys were being complete cowards in this situation. So yeah, no shit, it's going to be information that is going to be embarrassing to you, but that's why we deserve, as the public, to have that information to then turn around and hold you guys accountable, for supposedly protecting and serving the public. But finally, they finish off here saying, in his research, Schneider said that body-worn cameras often do not do what they're supposed to do, which is hold the police accountable to the public. This is because public record laws are often written in such ways as to provide wide latitude to the police to decide what the public actually gets to see and allows them to regain control of the narrative when it is convenient for them. So, okay, I mean, again, he's right. The whole point of having body cameras on police is that whenever there's a dispute in someone's, civil liberties or rights being violated, or if it's a situation like this that's obviously highly relevant to what the public needs to know in a moment like this, they have complete control over where or what type of information is released to the public in regards to their body cameras, which completely defeats the purpose of the whole point of having body camera footage. It should be always released to the public if they ask for it. But they finish off here with another quote saying, it's not a coincidence that journalists run into this problem of not being able to get the body camera footage over and over again. The law is by design. The privacy rules are by design to make it absolutely difficult as possible to release the information. So again, this is just one, another piece of the puzzle that we are trying to still piece together because of the, difficulty surrounding doing that, because of their lies and repeated changing of the stories and the narratives and the details of exactly what happened here. This is just one more layer that is being added on to all of the different layers that we've been talking about. This response was obviously a complete failure, but now I'm starting to question the degree to which they are trying to do this cover up here. I mean, did these cops fucking like shoot a kid or something like that? I mean, honestly, like, what would make them go to this extent to cover up any relevant details or information that they have at their disposal and prevent the public from seeing this information? I mean, they're hiring a private law firm to prevent the public from seeing the body camera footage, from seeing the 911 calls, from seeing the communications by the police while this was unfolding. I mean, this is just a complete top to bottom failure, but it's also a top to bottom perfect example of how the police operate with, impunity in this country. I mean, they are not being held accountable. The guy who was the commanding officer at the scene at the time, Pete Arredondo, that guy is now sitting on the Uvalde City Council. So, when you want to talk about having some sort of accountability for the public on our elected officials or on our police force, which are supposed to be protecting and serving the public, I mean, you have a perfect example right here of even in the worst circumstances where, even conservatives in some cases are saying, yeah, the police were at fault in this circumstance. They didn't do their jobs in this circumstance. Even then, you have a basically unanimous consensus, at least within the top ranks of the Republican Party within Texas, Greg Abbott, Ken Paxton, the Attorney General, the governor, teaming up to help these cops suppress a lot of this information. So honestly, it seems like it is probably going to be weeks, if not months, that we get an actual full picture of exactly what happened on this day. And certainly it seems like by then, the media, which has already largely moved on from this, they're not going to be talking about this. They're not going to be willing to apply the adequate pressure to, continue to unfold this story and get the actual details of this. So it seems like their strategy is honestly working somewhat at this point, but this is why it's so much more important to continue talking about this, continue putting that pressure on them, because they just want this story to die out. They don't want people to continue to follow up and demand more information be revealed to the public, because obviously their response to this was a complete abject failure, and they're not willing to confront that. They're not willing to hold themselves and their own officers on the scene accountable for their inaction on that day. And I mean, the result was, 19 dead kids, and you had cops standing out there for upwards of as pointed out here by Salon, 77 minutes while kids were bleeding out in the classroom, while kids were actively making 911 calls, begging them to come in and help. And they just stood out there like goddamn cowards. And of course, as also pointed out here by the Salon article, they also say Uvalde is going to be hiring more police in response to all of this. So of course, I mean, no matter what the situation is, even with the good guy with the gun narrative being completely dismantled and destroyed in an instance like this, you had dozens and dozens of good guys with guns who were standing outside, refused to act in this circumstance. They were, putting more pressure on the parents who were trying to get in to save their kids than they were on the shooter who was killing their kids. So, I mean, top to bottom, you have all of these different flaws clearly exposed within our police system here in the United States, and still the response is just, let's just hire more cops. I mean, clearly we just need more guns, we need more cops, we need to harden the schools, we need to turn them into mini police states, we need to have bulletproof glass, we need to have doors that are locking, we need to have one entrance and exit in and out of the schools. I mean, these are the types of deranged responses that we are getting from conservatives right now, while they are actively participating and are complicit in the ongoing cover-up of what the fuck actually happened that day.